Hi, this is Anna Gidros of GidzyBee Creatives. We're here for day 5 of our Spring Stitch With Me challenge. Be sure to comment, like, share, follow, subscribe so you don't miss a thing.
Hi and welcome back. Today we are on day 5 of the Stitch With Me challenge, and today we are going to be working with a stitch called Up and Down, and it is beyond simple. I hope you love it as much as I do. So let's get started. Today we're looping in Lavender Sparkle. It's a medium weight yarn from Hobby Lobby. I love this yarn brand, which is linked below, and we're going to loop it in. We're going to loop it in as we have all of our other yarns. Look at that pretty sparkle in here. Catches the light, I love that. Okay, so we're just gonna go under that first chain on the hook, loop it in our purple yarn, leaving a tail. Okay, so loop in your yarn, chain 1, turn your work, get all these ends out of the way. I didn't loop them in yesterday. In the first stitch, we're just going to do simple chain 1. Now in the second stitch across, we're going to do a double. Everything we learned from day 1 and day 2 is all you need to complete this row. So single, double. In the next stitch, we're going to do a single, in the next stitch, we're going to do a double. In the next stitch, we're going to do a single. In the next stitch, we're going to do a double. In the next stitch, a single. In the next stitch, you guessed it, a double. And we're going to repeat this pattern all the way down. Single double to the end of the row. Now, if you lose track of where you are, this is when it's helpful to understand what you're looking at. So, every time we have a single crochet, we have 1 loop at the top of the V. Every time we have a double crochet, I know it's kind of hard to see here, this one's easier to see, you have 2 loops. You have a single on this side of it, you have a single on this side of it, we have 2 loops here, we have a single here. And that's how you'll know what stitch you're on, because that will also be important when we get to the next row. So continue that pattern. We just completed a double. You can see the 2 loops of the V there. So in the next stitch, we're going to do a single. And then a double. And I'll meet you at the end of the row. Okay, we are reaching the end of our row now, still going in that same pattern. I just finished with a double, and now a single, and now a double, and a single to end. Now, you have the basis of the up and down, but it's really not complete unless you do the return pass, because the point of doing this up and down pattern is to get a different pattern or design than you did on just your plain doubles or just your plain singles. So it's really important on this one to do at least 1 return pass so you can kind of see how it all comes together. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. So since we ended with a single crochet, we're going to do a double crochet in that stitch. If you ended with a double crochet for some reason, then you would start with a single crochet. Next, I have a double crochet, so I'm going to do a single in there, And then once you have that, you just keep your pattern going. Double in the singles, single in the doubles. And then you'll start to notice this beautiful pattern developing. It looks different than just a straight row of single crochets. It looks different than just a straight row of double crochets. And because we're going double, single, and alternating with the previous double, single, that is why we call it the up and down stitch. All right, I'm going to complete this row. I just finished with a double, so moving on to single, and I will see you at the end of the row. Okay, I'm going to pause here in the middle of the row just again to talk to you about the importance of the anatomy of your stitches. And if this stitch is good for nothing else, it's good to show you, it's good to help you understand that you need to know what you're looking at. So in this case, if I put my work down and then I picked it up and I came back to the stitch and said, oh, do I need to do a double? Do I need to do a single here? Well, I can look at a couple of things. I can look at the previous stitch before it and recognize that as a double crochet. I can look at the stitch that it's going into and recognize that as a double crochet. So that's why it's really important to identify your stitches. I can identify this as a V stitch. I can identify this as a treble stitch. But knowing when you're reading a pattern and it says stitch into the chain one space, or stitch into the V, or stitch into the last double crochet, it's important to be able to identify what you're working on. So this stitch is great practice for that. Okay, we are reaching the end of the row now. I have one more single and one more double. And again, if you wanted to repeat this, you would just chain 2 and come backwards on your return pass, but that's all that I'm gonna add of this stitch. One thing I will say is you might wonder why we would do this as opposed to this or this. Why would we mix it up like that? And the reason for a stitch like this, or the Suzette stitch, or the wattle stitch, or the moss stitch, it gives your projects different dimension, different textures, and it makes your pattern interesting to the eye. So you might see patterns that call this something else, but they're getting you to do the same technique. I know the Suzette stitch is also known as the grit stitch, but the point of doing something like this is for dimension and texture. Okay, that's all I have for you today. See y'all tomorrow.